Don't forget to like the video, share your thoughts in the comments, and subscribe to stay updated with our latest stories. IT all started on a Tuesday, one of those unremarkable afternoons where the hours stretch out like taffy, warm and a little sticky. I was watering my petunias, a splash of defiant pink against the otherwise monotonously green canvas of my front yard, when I heard his voice. Carol? Got a minute? It was Arthur, my neighbor from across the street. Now, Arthur Henderson wasn't the sort of man you'd expect to call you over for a casual chat, let alone beckon you into the mysterious confines of his garage. He was a creature of routine, a silhouette behind his curtains most days, his lawn mowed with a precision that spoke of a life lived within carefully drawn lines. We'd exchanged pleasantries, of course, the usual nods and how are yous over the span of the 10 years I'd lived on Sycamore Lane. He was polite, reserved, maybe a little lonely since his wife, Martha, passed a few years back. I always thought of him as a quiet man, content in his solitude. S.O., when he called out, his voice raspy like he hadn't used it much that day. I admit, a little flutter of surprise went through me. I set down my watering can, the petunias momentarily forgotten. Everything all right, Arthur? I called back, wiping a smudge of potting soil from my cheek. He was standing at the edge of his driveway, by the slightly ajar double doors of his garage. He wasn't looking directly at me, more like he was addressing the prize-winning azaleas Martha used to fuss over. Yeah, fine, he mumbled, then shifted his weight. Just wondered if you could take a look at something. In here. He gestured vaguely towards the garage's shadowy interior. My mind raced for a moment. Had he hurt himself? Was there some kind of household emergency? He didn't seem distressed, more hesitant. Intrigued, and a little bit concerned, I crossed the street. The asphalt was warm under my sensible gardening shoes. Sure, Arthur. What's up? As I got closer, I could see the garage was dim, the only light spilling from the narrow gap between the doors and whatever filtered through a grimy side window. The usual garage smells wafted out: old cardboard, a hint of motor oil, dusty concrete. Nothing out of the ordinary. Arthur pulled one of the heavy doors open a little wider, just enough for me to slip through. He still wasn't making much eye contact, which was unusual even for him. There was a nervous energy about him, like a kid about to show off a secret fort. Just in here, he said again, his voice low. He stepped aside, and I walked past him into the cool dimness. For the first few seconds, my eyes were still adjusting from the bright afternoon sun. I saw the familiar shapes: a lawnmower shrouded in a canvas tarp, shelves laden with paint cans, and what looked like decades of accumulated odds and ends, a couple of old bicycles hanging from the rafters like metallic bats. Standard garage stuff. I turned to him, a question forming on my lips. So, what is it you wanted to show me, AR? And then I saw it. Or rather, them. My words caught in my throat. Tucked away in the back half of the garage, in a cleared space I never would have imagined existed behind the usual suburban clutter, it was like stepping into another world. My jaw literally dropped. I'm not prone to theatrics, mind you, but what I saw just didn't compute with the Arthur I thought I knew, or the unassuming beige house he lived in. It was astonishing. I just stood there, speechless, the scent of dust and oil now mingled with something else, something metallic and faintly, strangely alive. Arthur shuffled his feet behind me. I could hear his breath, a little unsteady. Well, he asked, his voice barely a whisper. What do you think? What I thought. I thought I'd stumbled into a magician's workshop, a sculptor's hidden sanctuary. Standing before me, illuminated by a couple of strategically placed work lights I hadn't noticed at first, were creatures. Or not creatures, exactly, but shapes, forms, wrought from metal. Twisted, gleaming, impossibly delicate in places, massively powerful in others. There was a heron, its neck arched in a graceful curve, feathers implied by 1,000 tiny, welded pieces of silver. Next to it, a rearing stallion, muscles rippling, crafted from what looked like old car parts, yet imbued with a wild, untamed energy. And beyond that, half hidden in shadow, was something larger, something that looked like a swirling galaxy of gears and cogs, all interconnected, intricate beyond belief. The air hummed with their silent, metallic stories. This wasn't just a hobby. This was passion, raw and breathtakingly beautiful, hidden away in a suburban garage. My quiet, reserved neighbor, Arthur Henderson, the man I thought I had pegged, was an artist. A phenomenal, secret artist. And I, Carol, was the first person, I suspected, to ever be invited into his world. The shock wasn't just what I saw. It was the sudden, jarring realization of how little we truly know about the people we see every day. Arthur cleared his throat, a small, nervous sound that broke the spell. It's something I do. To keep busy, you know. He gestured vaguely with a hand darkened by grease and something that looked like soot. Martha, she knew, of course, but not many others. I finally found my voice, though it came out a bit shaky. Arthur, these are magnificent. I had no idea. I stepped closer to the heron, my hand hovering, afraid to touch its delicate, metallic plumage. The precision, the artistry, it was overwhelming. Each piece, even the smallest shard of metal, seemed to have been chosen and placed with such incredible care and vision. The way the light caught the different textures, the interplay of shadow and gleam, it was all just wow. Well, it's mostly scrap, he said, a hint of a shy smile finally touching his lips. He picked up a twisted piece of rebar from a workbench laden with tools I didn't recognize. Welders, grinders, calipers. Old car bits, pipes, discarded machinery. Folks throw away the most amazing things. He ran a thumb over the rebar. I just see things in them. Shapes. Possibilities. I turned to look at him properly then. Really look at him. The reserved man I knew from across the street seemed to recede, and in his place stood someone with a fire in his eyes, a quiet intensity I'd never guessed at. His work clothes, usually just old shirts and pants I'd assumed were for gardening, now looked like the uniform of a craftsman, stained with the honorable marks of his labor. The garage wasn't just a storage space. It was a studio, a forge, a place where ordinary metal was transformed into extraordinary art. Why keep this such a secret? I asked, my voice softer now, tinged with a genuine curiosity that went beyond mere neighborly politeness. He shrugged, looking down at the piece of rebar in his hands. Wasn't ever trying to make a big deal of it. Martha liked them. That was enough. After it just became more for myself, I suppose. A way to process things. He gestured towards a half-finished piece in the corner, a complex sphere of interconnected rings. This one's been giving me trouble. The balance is off. I found myself drawn to it. It was different from the animal sculptures, more abstract, yet it had a captivating rhythm. What made you decide to show me? Now, after all this time? Arthur looked up, and this time he met my gaze directly. There was a vulnerability there, a flicker of something I couldn't quite name, hope, perhaps, or maybe just a desire to share a part of himself that had been hidden for too long. Honestly, Carol, he said, his voice gaining a bit more strength, I heard you talking to Mrs. Henderson's prize-winning azaleas the other day. The ones Martha loved so much. A faint smile played on his lips. You were telling them they were looking particularly vibrant this year. And it reminded me of Martha. She used to talk to her plants too. And then, well, I was working on that heron, trying to get the curve of the neck just so, and I thought maybe someone else might appreciate seeing these things. Someone who notices the little details. And your petunias, they're quite something this year. A warmth spread through me. It was such a simple, unexpected reason. Not a grand announcement, but a quiet reaching out, a connection made through shared, unspoken appreciations for flowers, for beauty, for the memories of loved ones. They are beautiful, Arthur, I said, my gaze sweeping across the incredible menagerie he had created. More than beautiful, they're alive. He seemed to visibly relax, the tension easing from his shoulders. Thank you, Carol. That means a fair bit coming from you. He paused, then asked a little hesitantly, I'm, trying to figure out a new piece. Something bigger. But I'm a bit stuck on the initial form. Maybe you'd be willing to look at some sketches sometime? Offer an opinion. The invitation hung in the air, unexpected and precious. This quiet man, this secret artist, was asking for my input. It wasn't just about looking anymore. It was about participating, in some small way, in his world. I'd be honored, Arthur, I said, and I meant it. A new sense of connection was forming, as strong and surprising as the metal sculptures that surrounded us. I had a feeling life on Sycamore Lane was about to become a lot more interesting. The initial shock had given way to a profound sense of wonder, and something akin to friendship was beginning to take root, right there in the dusty, magical space of Arthur Henderson's garage. Over the next few weeks, Arthur's garage became a quiet refuge for me. I'd find myself drawn there after my morning errands, or in the quiet lull of the late afternoon. He never pressured me. Sometimes I'd just bring over a thermos of coffee, and we'd sit on a couple of overturned buckets he'd cleaned off, him sipping slowly, me just taking in the silent majesty of his creations. The initial shock had long worn off, replaced by a comfortable awe and a growing appreciation for the man behind the art. He started showing me his sketches, rough, energetic drawings in a worn notebook, filled with ideas for new sculptures. His hands, which I'd only ever seen gripping a lawnmower handle or, occasionally, a grocery bag, moved with surprising deftness across the page, coaxing lines into potential forms. He'd explain his visions, a phoenix rising from abstract flames, a series of human figures representing different stages of life, a whimsical, intricate clockwork owl. He valued my opinion, not as an art critic, because I was far from it, but as a fresh pair of eyes, someone who could see the overall feeling of a piece without getting lost in the technicalities that sometimes bogged him down. What do you feel when you look at this, Carol? He'd ask, pointing to a sketch of interlocking gears that somehow conveyed a sense of yearning. And I'd tell him, honestly. Sometimes I'd see struggle, sometimes hope, sometimes a poignant loneliness. He'd nod, absorb it, and then maybe tweak a line or add a note in the margin. It was a gentle collaboration, a quiet sharing of perspectives that I found incredibly rewarding. I learned that he had worked as an engineer for many years, a drafter, which explained his precision and his understanding of structure. But this art, was his soul speaking, untethered by blueprints and client demands. One afternoon, I found him struggling with a large piece of sheet metal. He was trying to bend it into a complex curve for the wing of what he hoped would be an eagle, but it wasn't cooperating. He was frustrated, the usual quiet calm about him replaced by a furrowed brow and a tense set to his jaw. "It's too stubborn," he sighed, wiping sweat from his forehead with the back of a gloved hand. "Or maybe I'm just not strong enough anymore." Without thinking, I stepped forward. "Maybe you just need a different angle? Or an extra pair of hands." I wasn't sure what I could do, but I wanted to help. He looked at me, surprised, then a small smile. "All right, Carol. Let's see. If you can hold this end steady right here, and I'll try to use the lever bar on this side." So, there we were, me in my summer dress and sandals, him in his work gear, wrestling with a stubborn piece of steel. It was awkward, and I'm sure I wasn't much actual help in terms of brute force, but I held on tight, bracing myself. He positioned the lever, grunted with effort, and slowly, painstakingly, the metal began to yield, bending into the graceful arc he envisioned. When it was done, we both stepped back, slightly breathless. A small triumph. "We did it," he said, a grin spreading across his face, wider than I'd ever seen. "Thanks, Carol. Couldn't have done that one alone." "Teamwork," I replied, feeling a warmth that had nothing to do with the afternoon sun. It was in those small moments, sharing coffee, discussing sketches, even wrestling with uncooperative metal, that our connection deepened. It wasn't a romantic connection, not in the traditional sense. It was something quieter, more profound. A meeting of two people who had, in their own ways, been a little isolated, finding common ground in a shared appreciation for beauty and creation. I discovered a resilience in Arthur, a fierce passion that belied his quiet exterior. And in myself, I found a renewed sense of purpose, a feeling that I could still contribute, still connect, still be surprised by life and the people in it. The garage was no longer just Arthur's secret world. It was becoming a shared space, a testament to the unexpected ways friendship can bloom. He started leaving the side door unlocked for me on days he knew I might stop by, a silent invitation that I cherished. The climax of this quiet, unfolding story wasn't a single, dramatic event, but rather a gradual culmination, a moment of shared understanding that felt as significant as any grand reveal. Arthur had been working tirelessly on a new piece, the one he'd first shown me sketches for, the Phoenix. It was his most ambitious project yet, larger than the heron, more complex than the stallion. He'd been salvaging materials for months, sheets of copper that shimmered like fire, stainless steel that caught the light like water, even small, iridescent pieces of what looked like heat-treated titanium. He said he wanted it to represent rebirth, resilience, the beauty that can emerge from ashes. I knew, without him saying it, that it was also deeply connected to his feelings about Martha, about finding his way after loss. I'd watch him work, sometimes for hours. The clang of the hammer, the hiss of the welder, the shower of sparks, it was a symphony of creation. He moved with a focused intensity, his earlier hesitancy completely gone when he was immersed in his art. He'd talk to the metal, coaxing it, wrestling with it, sometimes cursing it under his breath, then apologizing to it like an old friend. I learned to anticipate when he needed a particular tool handed to him, or when he just needed me to be a quiet presence, a witness to his struggle and his triumph. One late autumn afternoon, the air crisp and smelling of wood smoke and fallen leaves, he finally stepped back from the nearly completed Phoenix. The work lights in the garage cast long shadows, making the metallic feathers glow with an inner fire. It was magnificent. The bird was captured mid-rise, wings spread wide, its head thrown back in a silent, powerful cry. The blend of different metals, the textures, the sheer dynamism of it. It took my breath away. It wasn't just a sculpture of a bird. It was a feeling, an emotion made tangible. It was hope, strength, and a fierce, undeniable beauty. Arthur was covered in grime, his hair matted with sweat, but his eyes shone with a weary, profound satisfaction. He looked at the phoenix, then at me, and a slow smile spread across his face. "Well, Carol," he said, his voice a little hoarse. "There it is. What do you think?" I couldn't speak for a moment. I walked around it slowly, feeling the power emanating from it. It was more than just skill, it was soul. His soul, poured into metal. "Arthur," I finally managed, my voice thick with emotion. It's the most beautiful thing I've ever seen. It truly is." He nodded, a simple gesture, but it was filled with a deep, unspoken gratitude. He walked over to a dusty old crate and pulled out two equally dusty glasses and a bottle of dandelion wine he'd made years ago and forgotten. "Martha always said this was for a special occasion. I reckon this qualifies." He poured two small glasses. The wine was surprisingly sweet and floral. We stood there, in the quiet of the garage, the magnificent phoenix shimmering between us, and clinked our glasses. "To rebirth," he said softly. And then, looking directly at me, his gaze open and sincere, and to friends who see the possibilities. In that moment, the emotional climax wasn't a shout, but a shared, quiet understanding. It was the culmination of months of shared coffee, quiet conversations, and the silent communion of watching an artist bring his vision to life. It was the respect he showed me by sharing his most vulnerable self, his art, and the respect I felt for his incredible talent and his resilient spirit. What happened was this: a friendship had been forged, as strong and as beautiful as the sculptures Arthur created. He had stepped out of the shadows of his grief and his reserve, and in doing so, had invited me to step into a richer, more artful understanding of the world around me and the hidden depths within the people we think we know. The garage, once a symbol of his solitary world, had become a place of connection, a testament to the idea that it's never too late to share your light or to find new meaning in unexpected places. My simple life on Sycamore Lane had been touched by something extraordinary, all because my neighbor called me into his garage. And what I found there wasn't just shocking, it was transformative.